Hello, everyone. So I'm Miroslavov, CEO and co-founder of OfficeRnD, and it's a huge pleasure for me to be here with you and kick off the very first edition of FlexWorld. So quickly before we dig into what is FlexWorld, let me tell you a couple words about what we do at OfficeRnD. So we are a software company building products for the flex space and hybrid work industries. We are already a team of 120 people spread across 4 different offices and now serving more than 1,000 customers. What's even more exciting is that we just raised a new investment round of 10 million that will help us grow faster, build more products and services, and expand our vision and mission to make flexible working the way of working. Okay, so what is FlexWorld? It's basically an annual event focused entirely on the flexible and hybrid way of working. So FlexWorld is going to be where we want to connect the OfficeRnD community with industry professionals to discuss the future of work, learn, get inspiration, and hopefully have a lot of fun. So why we are doing it? Well, first and foremost, I really want to give back. I want us all to share what we've learned and what we know about the industry. So I'm also hopeful that you're all going to learn a lot by listening and hearing our amazing speakers today. I'm also hopeful that you'll get some really good inspiration by their experiences. And as I mentioned, I know it's difficult to have fun online, but in the future, I do believe we'll do this in person, and we'll do it a real celebration and a lot of fun. And last but not least, we are dedicated to build a global community that share the common values of being really inclusive, diversity, and honestly try to give back to the whole industry. So that's why we're trying to create this new event called FlexWorld. So I'm sure that you're going to hear the words flex and hybrid like a million times today. So just to briefly elaborate what we actually want to say with that. So first of all, we named our products this way. And just to make things simpler, we also split the conference in 2 parallel tracks, so Flex and Hybrid. So Flex is basically for the providers of space, such as Coworking and Flex space operators, landlords, and property managers. While when we say Hybrid, we basically mean that's for tenants and all the professionals such as facility, office, HR managers, or anyone who is providing flexible space to employees in a corporate setup. So today specifically, we'll kick things off with the new rules of engagement by Jamie Russo, and then we'll continue the 2 tracks, Flex and Hybrid, where the Flex will focus on everything from expansion, demand generation to management agreements, and we'll dig in also into the flex technologies to run your businesses. In the hybrid track, we're going to explore the challenges and opportunities that arise mostly from COVID, but been actually happening before that, and also dig into the technologies that are emerging in this space. So before I wrap it up, I'm extremely hopeful that next year, as I mentioned, we'll be able to make that in person and meet in the real world because, it's difficult to be all online. And with that being said, I want to say thank you for being here and being with us. I wish you a good health and a lot of success. And with that, I want to pass it out to Jamie.
Here we go. Okay. So the theme of today, which I think fits really nicely into the content that OfficeRnD has teed up for you today. And I love the format of the conference today because you're going to get a little bit of all of the sort of aspects of our new rules of engagement. So I like this as a theme because I think we're in a world that is still emerging from a global pandemic. We have folks who are still on lockdown. I think our friends in New Zealand and Australia, some are still on lockdown, right? But we're 18 months into this, and there are things that we're starting to know. Miro and I were kind of looking at data yesterday. There are things that are starting to be true, like we're about 3/4 of the way back into recovery. And then there are things we're starting to suspect will be true. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Is there are things we know and things we still don't know. How are things going to evolve? But this is really a time of questioning everything. So the world of work has changed. And if you're a co-working space operator, you should be questioning everything. What is still true and what is changing? And if you're an end user, you know that everything is changing and you're trying to also figure out how to navigate, how to help your folks get back to work, where they'll work, what your policies will be. So it's a time of humble experimentation. So we're going to question sort of 4 big buckets of the co-working business: who you serve, what you sell, your marketing approach, and your real estate structure. And these buckets just happen to kind of align nicely with the content that's being delivered today. So you're going to get some time to really dive into these buckets and think about what's changing out there that will impact your business. And how do you want to act on what's changing, right? Because that is a choice that we have too. So you're in the right place today to kind of question these buckets. So we're going to start with who you serve. So if you're in one of my groups or you listen to the podcast, you know I talk about this a lot. So who you serve is really about who your ideal member is. Who is your space ideally designed to serve that's unique to you and your membership and how you differentiate? And it should impact every decision that you make, from the memberships that you offer, to your level of hospitality, to the coffee that you serve, and even down to like the soap that you have in the bathroom, right? So things have shifted. It used to be that many co-working space operators would start a space because they're solving somewhat of a personal problem, right? They're a freelancer or a small business owner, and they have a space and community challenge, right? They need great office space and they want to be around, like-minded people. And so they start a space that kind of serves that group. And so you've got a product mix and a marketing strategy that aligns around sort of this individual, like freelancer or very small business group. And that, is starting to shift. So now, and we're not all the way there yet in many markets yet, right? But in some markets, we're starting to see, okay, now there's this huge demand from enterprise customers who are thinking about how they help people back to work. So it used to be that our customer was someone who was in control of their office choice, right? So they didn't have an office that their employer told them they had to go to. So they were buying. And now we have this new buyer who may or may not be in control of where they choose to work, but they now have more control than ever before, because it used to be they mostly went to the office, right? And so that is really shifting. So our end user will still, of course, have the freelancers and the small business users. But now we've got this tremendous influx of new potential members that are remote corporate folks, or even bigger small businesses that used to have, their own space. So there's really a fundamental shift in who has the authority to decide, where they go to work. And so for us, we have to think about, what shifts do we want to make for this new audience? How does this impact our business? If we're going to expand, what does the product mix look like? Who are we serving, and how does that align? So there's a lot of decisions to be made going forward, because it's no longer just independents looking for flexibility, and quality and service and experience are now something everyone expects out of their workspace. So I could fill lots of slides with all these predictions. I won't, because we want to make sure we get to the meaty content. But I think the bottom line here is, look, lots of folks like McKinsey and PwC are looking at data, and it says 70% of corporate office users will take on some form of hybrid work post-pandemic. And that's a pretty big deal. I saw this come out yesterday. Again, I could fill many slides with these examples, but American Express kind of put out their positioning on how they're going to handle going back to work. So their new way of working, right? So that's kind of one of the big shifts, is work is no longer a place you go. It's a thing you do, and you get to choose where you do it. So Amex has said we'll have some folks who are always on site. We'll have some folks that are fully virtual, but most people will be hybrid, which is, they said 1 to 2 days in the office. This says 1 to 3, but the article actually said 1 to 2 days in the office. And so, and the other days, people are either at home or looking for a place to be. Or we have companies. So I was touring with Kane Wilmot, who said he's had Spotify come in. They are fully virtual, but every quarter they all get together and do this thing called a burst. And that is, they do all their sort of brainstorming and strategic thinking and teamwork and things you have to do when you're together. And they're using co-working spaces to do that. So there are a lot of new use cases out there around who we serve. And I think these are just kind of important context notes. We're starting to see even really office-centric cultures start to leverage flex and co-working, which has some pluses and minuses for operators out there. Again, you have to decide, am I going to serve these folks? So Goldman Sachs has partnered with Instant Offices to handle all of their flex and co-working. Netflix is working with a group called Office Network, and we're going to talk about the role in a second of these online brokers. P&G is working with Office Freedom. This has been pretty well publicized. The GSA awarded contracts to Liquid Space, DeskPass, WeWork, Expansive. So we're just seeing a tremendous shift into folks who said, we are all about the office, and now they're partnering with folks to find flex. So this starts to beg the question, okay, if I want to serve that group, then, what do I sell? So we used to start spaces that were pretty manageable to start, a mix of open space, a mix of private space, some meeting rooms. We had a lot of communal space, and we all know that's not going away by any means, but it's starting to shift. So, raise your hand or put in the chat if most of your demand is for a one-person office right now, right? So not a lot of folks using open space, although again, we're starting to see that happen. So the point is we're not doing a complete 180, right? But there is a shift happening that we have to be really aware of as we think about our current business and then growth, because now we're seeing that team demand come in. And again, you may not see it quite yet in your market. It probably depends on where you are. I toured 5 spaces in San Francisco the other day, and there were a very high occupancy level of team suites and very high level of demand for those, and just private space in general, right? So that's a big shift, and that creates some challenges for our business model and starting new spaces and expanding, which I will talk about in a minute. So I saw this on LinkedIn the other day, and I thought this was really telling around, okay, we have to think about, how do we want to play in the space? Who do we want to serve, and what's our product? Because Instant posted this and said, large flex spaces in high demand, only 2% of available space can accommodate over 100 people. And I would guess most folks on here aren't thinking about accommodating 100 people, right? Your team suites are probably 5 people. Maybe they get to 20 people. But there is a really interesting opportunity to serve. And I think there's this opportunity lines up with getting creative with your relationship with your landlord and figuring out how you might expand your business to serve this demand for larger spaces, because this is a landlord product because of the size, the scale, right? But if these folks want service, if they want access to different types of space, this will come out. So a couple of examples, and I'd love to show these just because I think if you haven't seen them, you may not be aware. So Industrious runs a product called Canvas, and it's basically like a team suite on demand. So it may be for 20 people to 100 people, and they will configure it as a separate, space. It looks like a co-working space, and it's likely that there's a serviced component in the building that they can access, extra meeting rooms, et cetera. So you'll see this is a Liquid Space post. They have an office for 37 people in Chicago. This, I think, is Expansive. Yep. So they have smart suites that can accommodate 100 people. So, these bigger groups that are looking, but look how, it looks like co-working, it's flex, it's turnkey, it's furnished, it may be serviced. So part of the point is, in terms of the bucket of questioning what we sell, before the pandemic, it was pretty simple. Hot desk, dedicated desk, full-time office, access to meeting rooms. We like to keep things, pretty simple, which, I have also always advocated. Like, look, don't overwhelm your end user with choice, because that people don't make choices when they have a lot of options. But today, in terms of rethinking everything, we're learning one size does not fit all anymore. It's harder and harder to kind of live in our little buckets if we're getting creative about who we serve and if we're expanding, who we serve. And I loved this post. Greg Smith, the CEO of Thinkific, posted in Forbes. He was talking to, occupiers, corporate employers, and saying, look, one of the reasons co-working spaces are so successful is that they think of their members as customers, which of course they are, right? Not employees. But when employers are thinking about going back to work and workspace and what they provide, they don't tend to think about their employees as customers who are, voting with their wallets, right? We have to have really great spaces with, we have to serve our ideal member in a way that's perfect for them, that makes them pay the price that we're asking. And that's not the case for employers, but it's a framework for them to start thinking about. And so again, with sort of serving our customers, then simple product mix. Now, probably lots of you are thinking about, and I know my members are, and this is what I'm hearing, which is why Miro and I were chatting about, and Miro, jump in about looking for data about like what's selling. And it's hard to see really big trend lines, because I think there's just hyper local experimentation with these things. But the broad theme is that we can't, it's getting harder and harder to sell our narrow memberships. People are looking for day offices, part-time offices, full-time offices, team share offices, reservable phone rooms, because everyone's on Zoom all the time, right? Husband and wife shared office, which we used to never be willing to do, right? I know I would have probably not wanted to do that. And now, no problem. I've asked for it twice, no problem. A bucket of office hours. Can I have a micro office? Co-working, plus office credits. Can I have more part-time memberships, which I always used to say, make those really expensive. We don't want part-time members. And now, people have a setup at home. We have to be more flexible about all these things. And we won't go into we all know like why people are asking for these things. It's that tension around, how do we create a business model that can serve them? So I love this example. Fueled Collective recently updated their website and their offerings. And this is kind of under the section of like how you work with us. Okay, you schedule a visit is your first step. And then step 2 is personalize your membership, right? I'm not sure we ever would have suggested that before, but now it's like, look, we know you all have different needs. Come in and we'll figure out what works for you. And we'll do the thing we don't want to do, which is have 600 plans, in OfficeRnD that we have to manage. 600 is probably a little dramatic, but you know what I mean. Same thing. This is Pillar Co-working. Both of these are OfficeRnD members, by the way, and are using OfficeRnD to manage these flexible options, offering day passes +1 office day. So just a lot of variety. The other big trend that I've seen, and WeWork just announced a partnership with a company called Feather, which is actually like a residential service, but you can go in and configure, and it's kind of cool. If you Google WeWork and Feather, the article will come up that shows how it works. They can configure their workspace to be exactly how they want it to be. Like lounge spaces, desk spaces, meeting rooms. But the theme, again, is personalized. Like, how do you want this space to work for you? And I've heard lots of great examples from independent operators who are also testing this concept. We'll design for you, or if you give us a year commitment, we'll give you a budget to decorate your office. We'll paint for you. We'll put up, different artwork. We'll make it yours, which is also really sticky. So that's an interesting theme. And I won't read through this, but this is just kind of the WeWork and Feather. And then the marketing approach. And we have a marketing session today that I think is going to be really illustrative of this point. So anybody who listens to the podcast, that I am a Google My Business, crazy person. I talk about it all the time because it's super, super critical. Google My Business is for the folks who are local, sort of our initial group of members who would find us by doing a search. And that's not going away. So don't take your foot off the gas on the Google My Business. But we're going to hear from some of these folks today. There are lots and lots of lead aggregators out there who are working with big companies to help them really efficiently find places for their teams to work. So our marketing shift, needs to say, yes, Google My Business and all of these other folks that are out there. And just in case you're wondering, there's no reason you can't be listed on every single one of these. So you want to see kind of maybe what's most popular in your market. I think we're going to see some shift there. We may see some consolidation, but there are a lot of those folks that are feeding in leads that we won't have access to. And then I think this is the one that's up next. Your real estate structure is the other thing you're going to question. So I talked about your product mix, and I know you're thinking, okay, right, more offices or even micro offices, which is a big trend, right, are expensive to build. And so where we might have traditionally done a lease agreement, the thing that's becoming more popular is creative partnerships with your landlord. And you may not all have a landlord that's feeling creative and wants to collaborate, but start looking, because there are a lot of folks out there. So Michael and I created a management agreement course, and we see case studies. Michael sees lots of them because this is what he does all the time. But we see case studies through folks that come through our course, in small markets, folks that have landlords that are getting creative and they want to serve that HQ model. And so you don't want to sign a lease for 30,000 square feet, maybe to serve this HQ model. But if you can acquire that customer and work with your landlord to service it and furnish it and do all the things that are out of their competency, there's a lot of opportunity for that. And that, again, is probably one of those things that's not really showing up in broad data. We know the industriouses are doing it. We know, the bigger players are doing it, but it is starting to happen at a local level. And so I think that's something to question too. How do I expand? How do I go to market with my next location? So I'm going to close out here, and hopefully we're doing okay on time. So I'll cruise through this really quickly. So we talked about all the things to question, and you're going to be able to think through those as you go through the sessions today. So think about these questions. How can you keep your business flexible and adaptable to take advantage of these emerging trends? Who do you best serve, and how will that change? And what does that look like? That's like some, offsite big thinking, with your team. How do you best serve your current and future members? How will you personalize, customize their options and experiences? How might you shift your marketing approach so that you make sure that you're getting the leads that you want to get? And how will you approach your real estate structure differently? I'm going to stop sharing. Miro, anything that you want to, I totally did. I was like anxious about the time, so I didn't flip over to Miro, but Miro, anything you want to add perspective wise about what you're seeing before we get people kind of off into their next session?
Well, I just want to say that was an amazing presentation, and I can fully agree with literally all you said. We are seeing all these trends working with our customers. So some of these indeed will take a little bit more time to be visible on a data level. However, it's all in motion. It's happening, and it's amazing. I am super excited for what's coming in our industry, and especially this partnership between the operators and the landlords. I hope more and more asset owners and landlords will become more creative, because, and I mean, it will happen out of necessity at the end. If they don't want to be creative, they will have to become one, because otherwise they will be, out of out of tenants. So honestly, thank you so much for the amazing keynote. I suggest we jump on the other sessions and close the stage.